And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says China has placed no restrictions on rare earth exports to the United States and suggested a formal agreement could be reached as early as Thanksgiving. His remarks come after the October 30th meeting between Trump and Xi in Malaysia, where questions lingered over whether any limits would be imposed on the critical U.S. industries, such as the military. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Keith Naughton. He's the co-founder and principal of Silent Majority Strategies. Thanks for joining us this morning, Keith. As we heard, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said recently that he expects the rare earths to flow freely from China without any restrictions on use, particularly for the military. Though in an interview with Fox's Maria Bartiromo, she was quite skeptical since China has frequently, gone back on deals that are signed. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, you can't trust the CCP. You can't trust Xi Jinping and the nationalists, the ultra-nationalists who are in charge of the country right now. I mean, the only way to make a deal stick with Xi and China is having leverage over them, where they're afraid to break the deal. So as long as Trump has that tariff threat, as long as Trump has other leverage against the CCP, then the deal will stick. Now, I think it's a good idea to have this deal because we've got to rebuild our supply chain there. We've got to rebuild our manufacturing. And anything that buys us time is a positive thing. But we know that if they think they can get away with it, just like this last time, they're going to cheat and break their word. No question about it.
Yeah, and as the adage goes, people respect what you inspect. So Bessent, in addressing Bartiromo, said that they were going to be setting up real-time dashboards to ensure that certain stage gates are being met. But as you point out, they're very good at sort of, going back quietly, and then, maybe weeks, months go by before we realize that, they're not holding up their end of the bargain. So how do we make this time different? You mentioned the leverage, but what about the accountability and inspection part?
Well, I think there's two things. I think we've got to accelerate our efforts to become independent, because there's just no way we're going to be able to have a consistent supply for industry or for our military. They'll always be trying to find some way to slow things up or say, oh, some license paperwork wasn't done right, and all sorts of bureaucratic hurdles that might stop short of a ban that are a de facto ban. The second thing that we need to do is maintain that economic pressure. I think having any kind of leverage against that makes sense. We also need to work with more partners. Right now, President Trump is trying to get a deal. I think he might have one in place with Australia, because other places around the world, other high-tech countries, they have a problem too. They have a dependency issue as well. And lastly, quite frankly, we've got to find ways to get these elements no matter what. And if that involves taking advantage of the corruption that we know exists in China, well, then we just have to do it, because these are necessary elements and we need them for our economy.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of a offense-defense approach to dealing with an adversary that does have leverage points over us, particularly with these rare earths. And of course, Trump has put a great onus on onshoring production of all different types of things. But it's not as easy with rare earths, because it's not just sourcing them, it's also the refining process. So how much time, in your view, do you think it will take before we have other alternatives for the amount of supply we need of things like magnets and other critical rare earths?
Well, you're right. You have to take the element and turn it into an oxide for it to be useful, and put it together with other elements to be alloys. So we don't really possess that right now. There's some production outside of China. We need to make sure that that remains safe and out of Chinese hands. We know that they've engaged in dumping and price wars to drive out competitors in the past. So we've got to guarantee support for that production that's outside. It's probably going to take a couple of years for us to do that. It could be shortened if we continue down the road of permit and regulatory reform that the president supports. I mean, this should be almost Manhattan Project kind of thing that like we did in World War II to get the nuclear weapons, we should be doing the same thing with rare earths because they underpin so much of modern society. So I think we can move more quickly than we believe possible when we put our minds to it. We just have to do that. We've got to shake off the sort of complacency that we've had, unfortunately, in the past. The Obama administration is really who let this disappear, let this industry disappear, did nothing about it. President Trump's been trying to do it, tried to do some of his first administration. Now I think he's a lot more serious in this administration, and it's late, but it's better late than never.
Yes, and they do have that leverage point with the rare earths. We are restricting advanced chips and only giving them sort of the older AI chips from NVIDIA and others. Do you see them having any success at preventing our military from using the rare earths? It seems like they've made attempts to do that, where they allow it for consumer products but not for military applications. And what type of negotiation leverage points do we have over them to make sure that we can use them for our military capabilities?
Well, I think that we just need to make sure that those can flow to the economy unrestricted. And to be just perfectly blunt about it, whatever restrictions they put on it, I wouldn't really care what restrictions they want. We need to say, well, you've got to allow the shipment of a certain quantity to the United States, period, and you've got to allow the United States government to buy it. And if they want to put in some restrictions, to be brutally honest, I just ignore them, because this is national security. We know they can't be trusted. You've got to live in the world of reality, not in the world of fantasy. So either getting directly to the United States, and I think also developing third-party channels that we can get them through other countries. China's done that with chips. They've imported chips through Singapore. They've imported chips through other third-party nations in violation of American regulations. If they're not going to follow the rules, then I don't really think we should feel incumbent to do so in a case that threatens our national security, that threatens our economy.
Well, it's certainly a very challenging position, being reliant on our key adversary for supply chains, as you mentioned, something that we'll be keeping a close eye on, although this deal does look like it is heading in the right direction for the U.S. Dr. Keith Naughton, thank you so much for your insights this morning.
Thank you.